Resuming debate, reprise de débat. The honourable member for Elmwood Transcona.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I'm pleased to rise in support of the initiative to establish a Mennonite Heritage Week. I want to start just by talking a little bit about the contributions of Mennonites to Northeast Winnipeg and somewhat as well to Manitoba. Of course, Manitoba has quite a significant Mennonite population, and it's a population that's definitely made a mark on Manitoba culture and Manitoba society. Just in Northeast Winnipeg alone, Madam Speaker, I think of some of the institutions in Northeast Winnipeg that owe their existence to Mennonites who came to Winnipeg. I think of Concordia Hospital, Madam Speaker, which was the Concordia Society was originally established in 1928, and the Concordia Hospital followed shortly after in 1931. It was established initially or spent a long time on de Salaberry Avenue, right on the bank of the Red River, where the Columbus Housing Co-op is today. And in 1974, it moved to its current location, where people know it well, on Concordia Avenue. Not long after opening in 1974, what they found was that the emergency room was well frequented, that the ICU was smaller than what they actually needed. They had misprojected what they needed. And by 1983, the emergency room was being expanded. The ICU number of beds was being doubled from 4 to 8. Concordia Hospital is in the news a lot today, Madam Speaker, because the current Conservative government is endeavoring now to close that same emergency room and close the ICU. It's something that people in Northeast Winnipeg are very aware of and very upset about, frankly, Madam Speaker, because that has become such an important institution in Northeast Winnipeg and an important point of access, open 24/7 for Northeast Winnipeggers to get access to the healthcare system. So debates are live and well about the Concordia Hospital and the role that it plays. But that institution, which is important and is being hotly contested now, was originally founded by Mennonites in Winnipeg, Madam Speaker. Not far down the road is Bethania Personal Care Home that got its start in the 1940s in Middle Church, but moved to Concordia Avenue in 1970 and currently cares for some 148 residents, Madam Speaker. I think of Sam's Place, which is an excellent restaurant and a great place to go get a bite. They've got a wonderful used bookstore, but in addition to being a lovely place to go get a meal and find a good book, Madam Speaker, it's also a social enterprise run by the Mennonite Central Committee, and they help train youth and give them skills that help them go out into the job market and find employment when they're ready for full-time employment, Madam Speaker. And I've hosted events at Sam's Place. I've held many meetings there. It's a really great place. So to anybody listening back home, I exhort you to, if you haven't been, to go and check out Sam's Place, Madam Speaker. On Chalmers Avenue in Elmwood Transcona, you'll find the MCC Thrift Store. It's one of many, Madam Speaker. There's over 100 shops across North America that are raising millions of dollars for the work of the Mennonite Central Committee. It started as a modest effort in rural Manitoba and quickly turned into a great success. We also have the Mennonite Brethren Collegiate Institute in Elmwood Transcona, which is an important part of the community. It has many students and is involved with the wider community. I'm thinking particularly of the Happy Days on Henderson Festival that's held on the grounds of MBCI every year. We have in Winnipeg, in the larger area, we also have the Canada Food Grains Bank, which is an important organization headquartered in Winnipeg that was originally founded to help Mennonite farmers who wanted to help people across the globe, Madam Speaker, by sending their surplus grain to places where there was an intense need. Canada Food Grains Bank continues. It was established in the early 80s, and it continues to be doing good work across the planet for people in many different countries. So those are just some examples of the institutions in Winnipeg, and particularly Northeast Winnipeg, where Mennonites have made a very pronounced and lasting contribution. I think of some of the people, Madam Speaker, and I'm just going to mention some of the people I've had the honor of knowing who've been involved in politics. Of course, it'll be people, mostly people who've been involved in the NDP in Northeast Winnipeg, but I think of MLAs like Vic Schrader, like Harry Schellenberg, Erna Braun, and Matt Wiebe as well, who's currently the MLA for Concordia. And so there have been political contributions made by Mennonites on not just on the NDP side, Madam Speaker. Obviously, there are Mennonites within various parties and who have made a number of different contributions. Mennonites originally came to Canada and started coming to Manitoba too in the 1870s when the Russian Tsarist government of the day undertook some reforms. They released the serfs, but in exchange required military service and took over the education system. And I highlight those two things because it was very important to Mennonites that they be able to teach their children their own language, that they be able to teach them their faith, and so have control over their own education. And it's also an important principle of Mennonites that they abstain from military service, and so that was not compatible with the Russian government's draft at that time. And they came to Canada under agreements that would both exempt them from military service and also give them a fair amount of autonomy with respect to schools for their children. Already in the 1890s, some of that was beginning to be challenged. There were changes to there was the Manitoba Schools question that came up and was controversial at the time, Madam Speaker, and Mennonites began to feel some pressure and discomfort and a sense that not all the deals that they had made as a condition of coming to Canada were being honored. And that was exacerbated with the onset of the First World War when Mennonites had to make the decision as to whether or not they would serve with the Canadian forces to fight in Europe or whether they would stay home, and the overwhelming majority of them decided not to participate, and that was not well received by all, Madam Speaker, and I want to come back to that in a moment. But I do want to say that for those who stayed, because some ended up leaving, they went to Mexico, they went to Paraguay, they went to other places in order to try and get back those kinds of agreements on education and military service they thought they had with Canada. But for those who stayed, they became a really important part of Manitoba culture and Manitoba society. They were an important part of promoting and cementing the cooperative movement, for instance, in Manitoba, Madam Speaker, with consumer co-ops and other kinds of co-ops, grain co-ops, in order to try and make life more affordable for themselves living in rural communities. They were an important part of the credit union movement. We have a huge Steinbach Credit Union building in Elmwood, Transcona, right off Highway 59. That's a credit union going strong, and so they continue to support that movement, Madam Speaker. But I see I have very little time left, so I just want to mention, Madam Speaker, that I've talked a lot about the achievements of Mennonites and the importance of them to Manitoba culture, but I just want to highlight that Canadians didn't always think that they would be a good fit. And there was opposition to having Mennonites settle, Madam Speaker. In fact, there was an order in council in 1919 that was passed that prohibited immigration of Mennonites, Hutterites, Doukhobors, and other undesirables, Madam Speaker. And so for a period of about 4 years, Mennonites were expressly prohibited from coming to the country. In the 1920s, there were comments made in this very place, like this, Madam Speaker. So I quote from a Mr. Buchanan, who was serving as the member at the time. He said, "I intend to argue that they are not desirable citizens, although probably not on the same ground as defined in the bill. I look upon a desirable citizen as one who comes into this country prepared to associate with the rest of the people and to assume all the obligations of citizenship. If immigrants fail to do that, then I do not look upon them as desirable citizens, and we should refrain from allowing such classes of people to enter the Dominion of Canada." A colleague, Mr. Green, said, "I don't think we would ever be able to assimilate these people so long as they're allowed to remain in these communities, and we should not allow the Doukhobors, Hutterites, and Mennonites, or any people of that sort to come into Canada and live under their present customs. If we're going to build up a united Canada, we must have people whom we can assimilate and who eventually will join the family of Canadian life." We hear comments like this today, Madam Speaker, in debates on immigration, and I think the Mennonites are a great example of people who came to this country worked hard, made significant contributions. I believe that's still true of people coming to the country from other parts of the world, and our job is to welcome them and work with them to ensure that those contributions are positive. Thank you.